Everybody watching this is likely to be worrying about the wrong thing when it comes to your bank balance and DWP. Lots of you are staring at your bank balance thinking, can DWP see this? Will this affect my PIP? Will this affect LCWRA? Will this affect my ESA? And as I've stated in so many videos, the answer to this is that the bank balance itself is not the majority of the problem. But something else in those bank statements absolutely is. And in this video, I'm going to be breaking it down, dispelling the myths, and helping you guys realize what you need to be doing to be evidencing in the right way so that the wrong assumptions cannot be made about you, your disability, or your bank balance. Now, stay with me to the end of this video because I'm going to be showing you exactly what quite a lot of claimants and even quite a lot of people that work in some of these organisations get very, very wrong. So much so that they get overturned by upper tribunals in court and employment tribunals. Now, first of all, let's start with the biggest myth, which is PIP. PIP obviously meaning personal independence payment. This is effectively a non-financial means tested benefit. So that means if you're working, not working, self-employed, whatever you are, you can also claim PIP. It's not an unemployment benefit. And because of that, lots of people like Joanne here make the wrong assumption that they are in the clear when it comes to bank statements, thinking PIP is not means tested, so your bank balance has nothing to do with it. But Joanne, it does. And as I said, we're going to be looking into this right now. And in the same stroke, we're going to be looking into the comment of Leslie and other people like this who says they're currently having an assessment, that they have sent in bank statements, that they receive full LCWRA, but have, as we can see there, a lot of very serious conditions, and they are worried whether or not their income is going to be removed. So we've got someone that obviously can't work because they're very unwell, and then we've got somebody else that, says it doesn't matter because, I'm not claiming an unemployment benefit, so the bank statements, they don't kind of feature here, they don't figure, they're not important. So first of all, PIP, because it is not a means tested benefit, that means your savings, your bank balance, pay attention to what I say, bank balance, and how much money you actually have sitting in your account is completely irrelevant. If you are not claiming universal credit or ESA or something like that, DWP cannot remove your PIP if you're not claiming universal credit or you're not claiming unemployment benefit because of how much money is in your bank account. However, there is another thing that you're looking for in your bank statements, and it's not the balance. PIP is based on how your disability affects your daily life and your mobility. It's not on whether you can work or not. Big difference between universal credit claimants. With PIP, you're not assessed on how much you earn or how much money you've got in the bank. And respectfully, please don't let anyone in the comment section tell you otherwise. So if your bank balance isn't the issue, why are DWP now asking PIP claimants for bank statements too? What is it that they're actually looking for? Now, before we go any further, I never used to work for PIP, but I did used to work in Universal Credit Land. And I have won very big cases personally against the Department of Work and Pensions. And whilst I was self-representing myself against a top Oxford barrister who's won awards, 20 years that she's been a barrister, she also made the same mistake that lots of people working for DWP and claimants make when they are thinking about people who work or who have self-employment and who have disabilities. And because of her mistake, she tried to get the courts to award costs against me for £186,000. So there's a lot of relevance here when it comes to evidencing disability. Now, obviously, I fought against that because what she was stating was not correct. And obviously, the court didn't agree with that barrister, and I did not have to pay £186,000 worth of costs. However, if I did not know how to evidence that, and if I did not know how to challenge that, I might be sitting here crying, telling you a completely different story. Now, I'm also pointing out this is not legal advice. I do not give legal advice, but I do share what I have gone through and the things I have noticed and how I put what I know into practice to make sure that my voice is heard and that my rights are as protected as I can make them as a disabled litigant in person. And that is the same knowledge that I pass on to you guys. Now, when I was in court, I had to produce my bank statements to the court because DWP wanted to make me pay £186,000 for their failure to make reasonable adjustments in the workplace. Yes, there will be a whole video about that to make that make sense. The point I'm making here is the bank statements. The bank statements tell a very chilling tale for some of you, I think, when you are having to produce them. And the number one thing that most people do when they have to produce bank statements, in my case it was to the employment tribunal, is that people start to get anxious, worry and overshare. And sometimes people say really silly things that's not going to help them at all. Not because they've done anything wrong, but because they're nervous. And lots of people just do not know how to challenge an authority competently and comprehensively. And it's on this point alone that I challenged what the barrister was trying to force the justice system to make them do. And it was all around the bank statements. Now, before I worked for DWP, I have worked in financial analysis. I have done various different things as jobs, and I've had my own businesses and brands for a very long time. And because of that, and because I've got, former qualifications in accountancy, I'm very good at understanding things, financial records and all sorts of data, and when things just don't look right. Now, any bookkeepers or trainee accountants they're watching will know exactly what I'm talking about. Sometimes people try and cover up things in business in particular through their accounts. Well, a trained mind will be able to see instantly when there is something wrong. Now, for lots of people claiming benefits, you're going to be questioned by people that, some of the people working at the job centre don't even have all of their GCSEs or O-levels, particularly the ones that have been working there for 15 years. So they're not looking at your bank statements with a forensic mind or a qualified financial mind. They're told clearly to collect and gather information, but your bank statements tell a story, and the story is relevant to your entitlement and the assumptions that are made about you. Obviously, your bank statements are going to say how much money you've got in your bank, but in this case, the story that is there within your bank statements is not about how much money you have or don't have, perhaps. It's how you live. Every transaction on a bank statement or a financial record is a data point. Where you went, when you went, even perhaps who you went with, how long you were there, how often you went where you went, how often you buy what you buy, activities that you might be funding, hobbies that you might be engaged in. And when that story contradicts quite often assumptions that are not based on fact, but they come from a certain authority, how your disability affects your daily life could then become a problem for you if you don't evidence it competently and comprehensively. Now, I'm going to go on to that in a little bit. And I've read a lot in the comments, people talking about the health journal. And thank you so much for all of your purchases and all of your lovely comments. This helps me, the purchases or the income I make from things like this, I use to generate more resources for you. You've all seen the Prove It tool, Justice Writer Pro, which I use to help win my case. All of those things, guys, you can use. But the health journal is not just all about the fluctuation trackers and the other things. It's not all about the disability trigger points and the reasonable adjustments. The health journal also has a 365 weekly planner. Very, very important, because if you're going to be asked a question about a certain thing that you did on a certain day, I can bet my bottom dollar 6 months later, or even a year later, or for some of you, you're saying 4 years later, you're not going to remember what the hell you were doing there. But it says on your bank statement that you did do that and you were there. Now, how are you going to explain that? If you had, obviously, the health journal, you could have your weekly planner here, and you can have all of your other health information that is relevant to your daily activity clearly linked and aligned together very specifically. And it is the specifics in evidence that helps you to win your case, whether that be against the DWP, whether that be with your counsel, whether that be with a PIP assessment or reassessment. Now, let's look at it this way. Think about it. You've told perhaps DWP something. Maybe you've told a PIP assessor that you can't leave the house. Maybe you say you can't leave without support. But your bank statements are showing regular weekly transactions at your supermarket, your one stop, your local garage, and some of them are 45 minutes away, where there are other ones a lot nearer to your house. Now, you might be thinking, well, I was visiting a family member, or I was visiting a friend, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if you don't have the evidence, and a contemporaneous note in your health journal is evidence, that can be photocopied, that can be used in an assessment, that can be used in court. But if you don't have that evidence, if you don't have that note, if it's not written down, if it's not recorded along with everything else, then all there is your word against their assumption and your bank statement telling a story that they want to use against you. Now, I'm going to give you a little insight into how far some barristers will go with this. In my case against DWP, there were my bank statements. I have 2 adult children. They contribute, or one of them contributes towards household expenses, perfectly normal. But on the bank statement, there was only one transfer from one son. The barrister started to allege that I was trying to withhold the 200 extra pounds or whatever it was from my other son, that I was deliberately concealing that money to mislead her, mislead the court, and obviously be an untruthful and unreliable person. That's what the bank statement showed. It showed that there was only £200 coming from one son. And then we had the barrister with all her baloney, which took about 15 minutes to explain what I've just told you in 60 seconds. The truth of the matter is the other son moved out over a year ago, lives with his girlfriend down the road. They rent a flat. That's what I said to them. But had I not been able to prove that as well, because I could prove it as well, that assumption and that information on the bank statement could have been used against me. Now, although it's only £200, for example, in that scenario, what that barrister was trying to do was to use that as an example to the court that I was a liar, that what I was saying, my evidence wasn't credible, that I was making things up, that I was deliberately trying to mislead the justice system. And trust me, a good barrister, that's pretty much what they do. So you need to have your evidence, and don't think if you're going to court, if it's an employment tribunal or a PIP tribunal, quite often they're not going to tell you, these legal advisors that are there, they're fighting against you. They're not going to tell you what they can and they can't kind of get away with. They're going to try it anyway. So if you don't know the law, if you're not a qualified barrister or a legal person like I'm not, then the next thing you've got to have is all of your evidence clearly and very, very forensically recorded. You don't need computer systems. You can start with the health journal. You just keep it simple. Trust in me, it will pay you dividends. Now let's go back to the scenario about you perhaps dating to an assessor, a disability assessor, or someone that you don't go out. But as we said, your bank statements tell them a completely different story in their eyes. Now, you may have said something like you struggle to prepare food, but there is no evidence on your bank statements you're ever having any food deliveries, not even having your shopping delivered. No takeaways, no deliveries when you're having bad days. There's no proof of evidence of support. Maybe you're having to pay a gardener or a cleaner. Maybe someone to come and cook for you. There are no invoices being paid to that person. There are technically, in their eyes, no adaptations as to how you shop. Now, that gap between what you stated on your forms that you wrote and what you're actively spending and how you're spending it is the difference. That is the massive gap where if you can't evidence genuinely what it is that you're doing for the right reasons, an assumption with a bank statement can tell a completely different story. And he said, she said is not always good enough. Now, I want to be clear here, right? This is not about catching people out who are lying. This is more about people who are telling the truth but don't have the type of analytical, I would say, mindset. They've never been in a situation like I've been in, perhaps, where you've been forced to provide evidence. And, people that don't know how to document things, haven't been able to document why their reality is so different to a assumption made by somebody that's just looked at your bank statement, who doesn't know you, doesn't know your life, doesn't know anything really about your health conditions and how they affect you. They just see digits on a piece of paper. Now, that distinction can make you lose your PIP, maybe get you downgraded. It might move you from LCWRA to LCW. It might take you out of a certain work group where you don't have to look for work, where you might have to start looking for work. Because they might say, well, if you're well enough to go and drive 45 minutes down the road and go to a supermarket and go to the range and, do whatever you do, then you can drive to a job. Just plain devil's advocate here. Because at the end of the day, what saved me against a potential £186,000 invoice that I would have been mandated to pay wasn't a solicitor, wasn't a barrister, and quite frankly, it wasn't legal training either. It was evidence. Clearly organised, clearly documented, kept forensically. Now, I've gone one step further with this. Well, quite a lot of step further with this to help a lot of people, because when you are in court or you're in a formal situation and you don't have a lot of time and you're self-representing, or maybe you've got disabilities. For example, I could not carry all of the folders and all of the bundles. I can't turn, I've got issues. There's lots of things that I can't do, okay? But what I did have to do was have the information and the evidence that the judge wanted immediately when she requested it, or when their barrister was trying to kind of frame something which wasn't at all the truth, in my eyes. So I created Justice Writer Pro. Justice Writer Pro is got to be now 5 years old, but it's had a massive upgrade. So now I've been able to dedicate a little bit more time into learning different things. I'm just going to blow it up for you. There we go. If you struggle with having to evidence certain things. This is, specifically in a very formal manner, case management, tribunals, employment tribunals, PIP tribunals, or you're being accused of something very serious, use Justice Writer Pro. It's not specifically for disabilities. I would say you could use this for any case management. And if you have a solicitor, right, this is going to save you money, because solicitors will charge thousands of pounds to put your bundles together. They will charge you hundreds and hundreds just to get all of your evidence and your documentation in order. You'd like this Justice Writer Pro is not thousands of pounds, and it's monthly subscription. You can use it whenever you need it. You can keep all of your data secure because it doesn't store other than on your device. So no one is going to see that information. Now, in my case, if I was not able to remember the specific court order and what it actually said, because I had a lot of court orders, we had a lot of court orders in the nearly 3.5 year long case. And then there were lots of preliminary court orders that went on for about 2 years as well. I would have been screwed. And quite frankly, with the amount of documentation, in my case, there were thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of evidence from me. I would not know really where it was. I wouldn't be able to find it at home. There was paperwork is everywhere. And if you've ever been in a court process where you're having to self-represent, or even not, even if you have a solicitor or a barrister, it's really nerve-wracking. Just the process of going to court itself, it debilitates a lot of people. It makes a lot of people so nervous that they can't think. So Justice Writer Pro is going to help you. Now, it's not for everybody, and that's absolutely fine, but I want to share that resource with you. Mackenzie's friends are using it, trainee solicitors are using it, and people that are just litigants in person that are representing themselves. And it's not legal advice. However, I have an area in there where recommended legal professionals are listed, and you can contact them directly and get legal advice. Now, if you're somebody who is just in a PIP situation and you're going through an application or you're going through reassessment, now I don't really want to slate anyone, but I think charging someone £900 to fill in a PIP form, as I've seen somebody do here on YouTube, is a little bit much. I think that is well and truly taking the Michael. So I created Prove It. Now, Prove It has actually been featured in the newspapers because apparently disability assessors think that this tool that I've created is helping too many people fraud the PIP system. I say you could equally say the same then about a solicitor or a barrister, couldn't you? You should give people the right tools and the right information so that they can make their own applications themselves. I say if a system is so flawed that it's so easy to fraud, then that system needs improving. Now, my company develops and creates a lot of digital tech, and we do it to find solutions to serious kind of world problems. Now, this tool is available inside my recent course, which is Prove It. And that's because I don't want people to misuse it. Now, once you've got the Prove It course, it's going to teach you all of the things that I had to do regarding my disability and evidencing it in a court of law. Again, it's not legal advice, but it's going to cost you a lot less than months and months and months with a solicitor. You can use it as a foundation to make your applications, do your reassessments, and know, quite frankly, what the rules are. Because clearly, when I look at the comments, a lot of people don't know what the rules are. I'm going to leave all of the links down below as always, and quite frankly, this is not expensive when you know what you're going to gain from it, and one of those things is going to be peace of mind, as well as the ability to know exactly how to challenge things correctly and how to start really evidencing your health and your disabilities and the things you're doing on the daily so that it can't be misused against you. Because one of the things I will say about this whole situation is that when you challenge certain entities, they just don't like it, and they're going to try and find, in some ways, and I believe this was the case in my case, they're going to try and find a way to fault you or fault what you're doing because they don't like that you found the faults in what they were doing. But as I always say, it's a big saying I say in my company, data doesn't lie. Unless, of course, you've deliberately made up the photocopy. Anyway, guys, I hope this helps a lot of you out. Please leave your comments down below. Thank you as well for all your kind messages relating to my mum recently. I really appreciate that. It's very kind of you. And I will see you in the next one.